son, you're about as useful as a cock-flavored lollipop.
Why, hello there. Sorry for the lack of videos lately. I've got to put a suit on specifically for my videos, and it takes a lot of effort doing that.
Riiiiip Toorrrrrn, what a name, huh? A name that would strike fear into the hearts of other actors.
God love him wherever you are, Rip. You know, is he behind me? I know he's passed now.
I can tell him, and he's dead now, so it's
well, that's true too. Yeah, good point.
Not like he's gonna come get me.
But let's get real though, that's not actually his real name. His real name was Elmo Rule Toorrrrrrn Jr. The nickname Rip is actually a family tradition amongst his family that was used by his father, his uncle, and his cousin, and he was no different. He was truly a jack of all trades. No matter what role he was in, he always nailed it. He could be scary, he could be dramatic, and as we all know, he could be very, very funny.
If we quickly go back to the Maidstone incident between Riiiiip Toorrrrrrn and Norman Mailer, there's two things I want to quickly mention. First of all, for some reason, I completely forgot to mention that when Toorrrrrrn initially attacked Norman Mailer, Mailer, in self-defense, had actually bitten off a little bit of Toorrrrrn's ear. Toorrrrrrn had to get this reattached when he later went to hospital. Also, because of this great comment on my video, it actually sent me a link to a Riiiipp Toorrrrrrn interview where he actually talked about this incident to David Letterman. Now, when Letterman asks Riiiipp Toorrrrrrn about this incident, Toorrrrrrn is clearly very uncomfortable about this because there probably was a lot of legal things he could not say for obvious reasons. But the most shocking part of this interview is that Riiiipp Toorrrrrrn actually said that him and Mailer were actually still very good friends after this incident, although they would only see each other once a year after the incident. I don't know about you, but I call bullshit on that.
Also, if we quickly go back to the knife fight between Riiiipp Toorrrrrn and Dennis Hopper, I actually forgot to mention that when Dennis Hopper lost the lawsuit, he actually appealed against this. However, the judge once again ruled in Riiiipp Toorrrrrn's favour, and Dennis Hopper was required to pay another $475,000 in damages. At the end of the day though, everybody loves Riiiipp Toorrrrrn. Well, except the police, and some film producers, and Whoopi Goldberg, and Peter Tolan. So, let's talk about these people, shall we?
For a whole year, I concentrated equally on two things, fucking and World Enterprises. It was neck and neck.
A very interesting chapter in Riiiipp Toorrrrrn's career is when he tried his hand at directing. Blah, 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 blah. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, everything. Everything went wrong. So, to date, the only film that Riiiipp Toorrrrrn had ever directed was a film called The Telephone. And it's a very strange story, to say the least. But I might as well tell it because it's not even the weirdest thing that's ever happened to Riiiipp Toorrrrrn, let's be honest. Terry Southern, a famous screenwriter, had formed his own company called Hawkeye, and along with the singer-songwriter Harry Nilsson, they wrote a little screenplay called The Telephone. Terry Southern had co-written the scripts for Dr. Strangelove, The Cincinnati Kid, the original Casino Royale, and Easy Rider. When Southern was asked why Riiiipp Toorrrrrrn of all people was chosen to direct The Telephone, he had stated that he actually saw Riiiipp direct on stage. He then goes on to say, "It just occurred to me that he could do it, and I didn't think there would be much to do, because it all takes place in a one-room apartment. It turned out Whoopi Goldberg, was a great admirer of Riiiipp. When he and Geraldine Page being Riiiipp Toorrrrrn's wife, lived on 22nd Street in New York, Whoopi was an unwed mother on welfare and living in that neighborhood. She would be walking to the welfare office to get her checked and sometimes pass them in the street." So this sounds pretty promising. Riiiipp and Whoopi already have respect for each other, you have a very talented writer involved, so why did this go badly? As the making of the film went on, Riiiipp Toorrrrrn realised something very unusual. Whoopi Goldberg was improvising her own lines. She wasn't following the script, no matter how many times Toorrrrrrn had directed her to read the script. There's not a lot of information about The Telephone. The only thing I was really able to find was extracts from this interview with Terry Southern, which was conducted by Lee Hill. According to Terry Southern, well, what happened was these big asshole producers told Whoopi that, quote unquote, this is a Whoopi Goldberg movie. She could do whatever she wanted to do. So this ultimately begs the question though, why did the producers tell Whoopi Goldberg to basically ignore the script? Personally, I believe the producers already had a bias against Rip Torn for his previous misadventures. If we quickly go back to the lawsuit between Dennis Hopper and Rip Torn, the reason why Rip Torn winning this lawsuit was such a big deal, because for at least 2 decades, nobody really knew what happened between Dennis Hopper and Rip Torn. Nobody knew who really started the fight, because they were both madmen. The difference, however, between Torn and Hopper is that while Hopper was also a madman, he was also a made man. This is the man who directed Easy Rider and changed the landscape of American cinema as we know it. A lot of people probably would have taken Hopper's defense despite being crazy himself. This lawsuit, however, completely vindicated Torn.
It should be noted as well that it's not exactly true that Torn's career was dead exactly after the Maidstone and Easy Rider incidents. In fact, Torn was actually nominated for an Academy Award for the movie Cross Creek that was released in 1983. So he was definitely not out of work exactly. However, he always had this black cloud over him where he was seen as being a little bit scary and a little bit of a loose cannon. Personally, in my opinion, I think Torn really wanted to do something about the making of Telephone and probably wanted to put Whoopi in her place, but when you have the reputation of being a madman, Torn probably had to watch his back and watch his steps, otherwise his career could have been completely ruined for this.
Sadly, there might have been another reason why Rip Torn was barely able to fight for the Telephone. Around this time, Rip Torn's second wife, Geraldine Page, had unexpectedly passed away of a heart attack. The two had been married for 24 years. I'm not 100% certain about the timeline of the events here, if I'm being honest. Page had died on June 13th, 1987, and the Telephone had come out in early 1988. So, I have a feeling that another reason why Torn was barely able to fight for his film is simply because he was going through a mourning process. The reason I'm bringing this up is when I was looking for Rip Torn facts online, I looked at an article by Fascinate.com. However, there is a slight inconsistency here because it seems to think that following the flop of the Telephone, that's when Torn had discovered his wife had passed away, although his wife had passed away before the making of the Telephone. This feud between the producers and Rip Torn got so bad that they actually fired the director of photography on the film, John Alonzo. Instead, Alonzo was replaced with Whoopi Goldberg's own husband. Rip Torn, at this point, decided that he had enough. He, Terry Southern, and Harry Nilsson made their own version of the Telephone. The reason they were able to do this is because when Whoopi Goldberg did decide to follow the script, they decided to use each take where she did that so it would follow the script more closely. So basically, there are 2 versions of the Telephone, Rip Torn's version and Whoopi Goldberg's version. Bizarrely enough, when Rip Torn tried to make his own version of the Telephone, this resulted in another lawsuit where Whoopi Goldberg tried to prevent the film from being released, and once again, Rip Torn actually ended up winning. So in a very weird turn of events, Rip Torn is 3-0 in lawsuits, and 0-4 behind the wheel. So, according to Southern at the end of the day, it seems like this was all just a big misunderstanding. Whoopi Goldberg and Rip Torn clearly respected each other, but the producers basically got in the way and made them clash. Ironically enough, even though The Telephone was a complete disaster, it's actually the only film that came out of the production company Hawkeye. The story of the Hawkeye company itself could be a video on its own. Hey Vo. What's the worst that could happen with Whoopi Goldberg improvising her... Oh, everything. Everything went wrong again.
The film was a critical and commercial disaster. When this film was screened in New York, allegedly, audiences called out, "I want my money back," and "I hope this movie breaks."
Nap. So
Generally not. Not as a rule.
What a fucking lunatic.
One of Rip Torn's most well-known performances is as Artie from The Larry Sanders Show. Now, this is considered to be one of Rip Torn's greatest performances. Unfortunately though, according to the executive producer Peter Tolan, while Rip Torn was fantastic on the show, his behaviour was another story. Will Harris has a great interview with Peter Tolan regarding Rip Torn, Peter Tolan being one of the executive producers of The Larry Sanders Show. Peter Tolan does not mince his words here when it comes to Rip Torn, as he accuses Rip Torn of being a bully on set and was very difficult to work with. This had actually resulted in a massive argument between Tolan and Rip Torn, where Tolan had shouted at Torn and Rip had actually left the set in despair. And of course, as the saying goes, life imitates art. This specific argument, according to Peter Tolan, had actually inspired one of the most well-known episodes of The Larry Sanders Show, this episode being Arthur After Hours. Okay, I meant to say art imitates life. I know this is the second time I've made this mistake, but you get what I mean. The guy's name's Artie, get it?
And the show's called Arthur After Hours, and it's a thing where Arthur has a fight with Larry, and ends up spending the night in the studio alone. And it's a tour de force. He does quote Shakespeare. He sings with a karaoke machine at center stage on the talk show set. during the night, he makes friends with a Romanian or something janitor who works up there. And the whole idea of the thing was these are two men who should be working towards the same goal. It doesn't look like it, but one of them cleans up during the day, and the other one cleans up at night. They're both doing the same job, and they connect, and they have a falling out. And then the show ends. You know, the next day, Larry seems to have completely forgotten about any sort of argument that they had, and the show ends.
And as Tolan beautifully describes in a very ironic twist of events, guess who won the Emmy for this episode? Rip Torn, and not Peter Tolan.
And I just want to say that life and show business especially is unfair. We had been nominated for so many Emmy Awards, and the first Emmy Award we won was Rip for that episode. So the motherfucker behaves like a lunatic. I call him out. I write him a script. He wins an Emmy. What the is fair? Oh, by the way, I didn't win. I got nominated. So, you know, sometimes I'd be nominated twice in the same category, and I'd lose. Jesus Christ.
That takes talent.
And as a gentle reminder, this is the same year where he was competing against Michael Richards and Jason Alexander in Seinfeld.
George is getting frustrated.
Sadly, this interview is a bit of an eye-opener for fans of Rip Torn such as myself. Long story short, Torn was probably not the nicest person to work with. Around this time, this is when Rip Torn really started to drink.
Now guys, I think it's time we talk about the main event of this video. We're going to talk about the drunken antics of Rip Torn. Now, I should put this as a disclaimer before we proceed here. You shouldn't do this, because it is a very selfish thing that Rip Torn used to do. It's not funny at the end of the day, because ultimately this guy did put other lives in danger, and he genuinely could have killed someone else, or himself. But this video is really funny.
As you can see in this video, this is a very drunken Rip Torn who's just been arrested for driving under the influence. Rip Torn is trying to reason with the police officers that he's just had 1 or 2 drinks and that he should be let go, otherwise they're going to be in a lot of trouble. But in all seriousness though, this became a huge problem in Rip Torn's life. For some reason or another, Rip Torn drunk and drove a lot. This video you just saw was actually in 2004. He was later accused and acquitted of DUI and causing an accident. As far as I'm aware, no one was hurt or killed, thankfully. In 2006, however, Rip Torn was again arrested as he was in another DUI incident where he collided with a tractor trailer. He had to pay a fine for this and even lost his license temporarily. Then 2 years later, in December 2008, once again Rip Torn was caught driving under the influence and was sentenced to probation. He even had to retake his driver's test because of a hearing impairment he had. And unfortunately, like most celebrities, he basically got away with it scot-free and was allowed back on the road.
I'm going to send you all to jail.
Rip Torn would eventually develop a pretty bad reputation once again as being a guy who was in many DUIs. Although that doesn't stop a lot of celebrities, but that's not the point. However, the crown jewel of Rip Torn drunk stories is without a shadow of a doubt what happened on January the 29th, 2010. It was during this night when Rip Torn broke into a bank in Lakesfield, Connecticut. The very next day, the police came to the bank looking for the person who broke in. They found a sleeping Rip Torn with a loaded gun. Why did this happen, you may ask? Well, Rip Torn was so drunk at this point that he broke into said bank thinking it was his own house. Keep in mind, his house is in Salisbury and it is located 25 miles away from Connecticut, so he was a little bit off there.
You know how he got off, right?
Actually, I don't think I do.
What happened was that he went in and they found him asleep on a couch in like the waiting area or something. But you know, the one detail was, because he had said, I thought I was home, is that he had taken his boots off, and that did it.
Yeah,
Clearly he thought he was home. He took his shoes off.
that's fair.
And left them by the door and then went to the thing. And they went, yeah, who would do that? If you're going to rob a bank, you don't go in, take your shoes off, and take a nap. So,
Generally not.
Oh,
Not as a rule.
what a fucking lunatic.
I think it's safe to say that this will be the last video that I do on Rip Torn. He was a great actor. Not a great person, but he was a great actor. Were these videos a glorification of Rip Torn? Not exactly. As I said, you shouldn't drink drive, because at the end of the day, you literally could kill someone, and Torn was very lucky that he even made it to the age of 80, let's be honest. But Rip Torn, to me, is such a fascinating figure. At this point, he's become a myth, a legend. He should be known for his work as an actor, because this guy, as I said previously, was very versatile, and he was genuinely a very talented person who unwittingly had his career kind of ruined because of the Dennis Hopper incident. I mean, it doesn't help that he was crazy and attacked people with a hammer, but that's not the point. Rip Torn was a man who ultimately lived his character on screen and off screen. I'll always remember that Michael Ironside interview where he talks about how he went missing for days on end, came back in a destroyed car, and gave no reason to Michael Ironside why he went missing. And that was all on the set of a Western too. This man was a real-life cowboy, and in ways he was the American dream. A man in ways who kind of beat cancel culture in a way before cancel culture even really existed, and a man who created so many stories about himself and his own persona that even again, when people like Michael Ironside and Peter Tolan talk about him after he's dead, they're still a little bit scared that he's just behind the corner.
I should note, by the way, when I said that Torn has kind of beat cancel culture, I mean that in a very ironic sense, in the sense that technically he probably should have been cancelled for the drink driving incident and the Maidstone incident, yet the closest he came to being cancelled was for an incident where he defended himself. But, you know, that's the irony of America for you.
The man was a real-life boogeyman. So I think it's time that we do celebrate the career of Rip Torn. And if you are going to celebrate the career of Rip Torn, please drink responsibly and don't be a dickhead like he was.
However, as we'll come to see, as crazy as Rip Torn was, there are much worse people in Hollywood. Much worse.
Let's fuck! I'll fuck anything that moves!
Oh, what is the malted liquor? What
Get you drunker quicker. What comes in bottles or in cans?
Jail.
Can't get enough of it.
Jail.
We really love it.
Jail.
Think I'm a man.
Jail.
Kissing, hugging.
Jail.
Mother chucking.
Jail.
Only out to here.
Jail.
I did not refuse it.
Jail.
It really is a
Jail. Jail. Jail.
Have a look at the headlock here. See that chap over there? Get your hand off my penis! This is the bloke who got me on the penis before.
Drunken,
Why did you do this? But what is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
Those things give me the schlit.
Drink with your family. Drink it with your friends. Drink till
Ah,
your
the
stomach
French.
distends. Beer is liquid bread. It's good for you. We like to drink till we spew.
Ah, the French.
I don't know where I felt like it. Get a little drink around here, dude.
Jail. Jail.
We really love it.
Jail.
Become a man.
Jail.
Kiss and hug it.
Jail.
Brother chuck it.
Jail.
My belly out to here.
Jail.
Golly, I adore it.
Jail.
Damn it, boy.
Jail. 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 Jail.
I'm deeply sorry you had to see that.
If you like this video, for some reason, then please leave a comment on who else you'd like me to make a video on. Of course, the Dennis Hopper video will be coming soon, but comment any other crazy actors or directors that you want me to discuss. Please check out my other videos. I have a great video on Norm Macdonald vs. Don Allmeyer, if you're willing to accept the horrible audio in that. My Death Grips video is my most liked video on my channel so far, and of course, my favourite video I've made so far is the Maidstone incident with our favourite nutcase, Riiiiip Toorrrrrrn. Have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year. Thank you to every single person who's liked, disliked, commented and subscribed to my videos. It does mean a lot. Thank you. Don't watch my Universal Soldier video though, it sucks.